Hey, welcome back to the channel. So today I'm in Clark, New Jersey. It's Thursday, March 30th. It's just about 34 degrees. Temperature's supposed to go up to around 50 today, which will be good. But right now I'm in the shade. It's really cold, so that's why I'm wearing a hat, obviously. But we'll be changing this meter that you see in the background here, and the riser, and then of course the load side of the meter down into the panel, which is down the basement, which we'll get to this afternoon. First, we want to start by cleaning up the old service equipment so that we get the new service equipment installed. So thanks for coming back. If you haven't already, like this video and subscribe. Please do that. That helps a lot. So thank you. So take notice here as I'm taking this cover off of the meter, how the whole enclosure is just moving around. When I pull the meter out there, the whole enclosure is kind of just flapping in the breeze right there. That's because there's no screws holding that meter enclosure to the house. And the reason why that happens is when the vinyl siding was installed, the vinyl siding installers decided to remove the electric themselves without calling a licensed electrician, as they're supposed to do. Anything in New Jersey, you got to have a license if you're working over 10 volts. This is obviously a 240 volt nominal service. And so they decided to do it themselves, put the straps on randomly, and of course no screws in the meter, because who wants to take the meter out there and risk getting blown sky high by live electricity? So they never bothered to call an electrician, and that whole meter enclosure was just flapping in the breeze. And you'll see here in a moment when I take off this final strap here with that cable just flapping in the breeze like that, that the whole meter just falls to the ground. Definitely not safe. So if you're considering doing some siding, get in touch with your electrician and have him remove it from the side so the siders can do their job properly, and you won't have your meter flapping in the breeze. Also, while I was here, there was this old telephone line that was down in the front yard, just kind of sitting there in the shrubs in the front. So I decided to go ahead and just remove that. It's an old telephone landline, so no longer being used, and that's why I got rid of it. See here the insulation that was up in the free air. If you can see that right there, just that comes in contact with that, and you're gonna have a lot of arcing. Definitely start a fire with that. Long past due to have this work done. So now that all my tools and ladders and garbage cans are in place here, I'm going to start working on the service riser. And what I'm doing here is I'm peeling away the sheathing from the service entrance cable here so I can expose my conductors. And you'll see once I get them undone here, the grounded neutral conductor from the service utility is wrapped around this particular cable here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to peel away the sheathing, and then I'm going to peel away the white taping that's around it, for lack of a better term. And then we'll fully assemble the weather head here, or the service head, and prepare our conductors. And you'll see once I get the sheathing off, I'll remove the grounded neutral conductor here from the ungrounded conductors. And then what I'll do is I'll spin them around and tighten them up, forming a more solid conductor to attach up there at the service head. What you want to do here is you want to pop off this head so that you're able to slide the conductors through the opening, and then once the conductors are in there, you'll fold them over so you're able to put this cap back on. So be careful here not to bust this cap, especially when it's cold. It wasn't that cold, it wasn't freezing, but it was cold. It was about 35 degrees as I'm doing this, and obviously I can't do it with my gloves on, so it was pretty cold. But if it's really, really cold, you could break that plastic, and now you have to get a new service head to finish this job. And if you got to run to the supply house, that really could be a pain in the ass of your day. So instead of moving out of there at 6 o'clock, you'll be moving out of there at 7, or even worse, 8 or even 9 o'clock. So be careful taking this head off. As you can see, I'm struggling. There, I finally get it. Now, some utilities are going to be different, but here in PSEG country, they recommend that you leave them 3 feet of open conductor from the service head for PSEG, the utility company here, to connect the service. You'll see when I get up on top of the ladder here that I imagine at some point it was cut because they were really, really short leads from the street. I didn't have a lot to work with, so something like that I can call. If it's a dire emergency, I would call PSEG directly and tell them that there's an emergency and these conductors are too short, or there's something wrong, or some kind of danger. But there's really no danger that I saw. So over the course of events, once this work gets inspected and approved, the electrical inspector in this town will send in what's known as a cut-in card to the utility company to let them know that the service has been upgraded, and they could either change the meter or do what they got to do as far as the new upgrade is concerned. So just remember, 3 feet of conductors coming out of that service head, and you're good to go. So here I'm just forming my grounded neutral conductor here to form one big conductor, and I think I went the wrong way. I don't know how that happened, but I did. So I had to go reverse. That's why I was a little stumped here for a moment. But basically, if you do something like I'm doing here, you'll have all those single-stranded conductors. Well, there's solid conductors, but it actually forms a stranded conductor. To form them as a solid conductor, so I can fit my butt splice in later and attach it to the utility grounded neutral up at the service head. The next step here is to fold over these conductors so I'm able to get the service cap, the top, on to the service head here. And this is really important to keep any precipitation, rain, snow from getting inside the cable here. If it gets inside the cable, I have seen evidence of the water getting inside the cable and making its way down from the service head to the meter, inside the meter, and then eventually down into the main electrical panel. Now you think that's a little far-fetched, but I've seen it more than once. So it's real important to learn how to install service entrance cable properly, and definitely you want to be alerted to installing the service head and the drip loop, more importantly. One of the little codes here that you might not know is that this service head has to be above the service hook from the utility. And the main reason for that is to form that drip loop so the water does not get in the cable and inside to your service. Okay, so once I have my riser assembly all put together here, I carry it up the ladder. It is kind of heavy, not super heavy. I would say it's probably maybe 30 or 40 pounds. This is a 30-foot length of service entrance cable here for 200 amp. So the first thing you do is you put a screw in that fascia that's behind the vinyl siding right there, which is a part of the framing, one of the rafters on the end there, on the gable end here. And you drive a screw in there and use the service head to attach it. There's a keyhole in that service head that holds it up to temporarily. And then you want to get a strap. I think the code calls for within 12 inches of that service head. I usually get it as close as I can to that service head when I'm using the service entrance cable here. That just makes for a sturdier positioning, and I know it's not going to fall down. So get that strap as close as you can to that service head, and then very delicately work your way down I got to make a sharp turn here to get closer to the fascia again. But I need to be above the hook that you see right by my left hand there. That's attached also to the fascia. The service head needs to be above that service hook. That's a code regulation right there for sure. So make sure you do that. And I'm using 2.5 inch galvanized screws here, coarse screws, to attach the service head and my straps all the way down. While I'm up on the ladder attaching the straps, I'm eyeballing the cable to make sure it's going to come straight into the meter. When I get down onto the ground, I use this 4-foot level to draw a plumb line in a couple of spots where I know that the cable is going to lay on top of that pencil line, and this way that service entrance cable is going to come right down in the center, right into the center of the meter. And I want to put the meter back where it was before. You can see that little shaded section right there. Because if that's damaged or the sun's been beaten down on it's a different color, you want to put the meter on top of that so when you're done it doesn't look like hell. So this is what's known as a PSEG fifth jaw meter enclosure. What PSEG does that's unique, and I don't know what they do around the rest of the country, but here in New Jersey and PSEG country, we have that fifth jaw so they can monitor the neutral current being used. And I believe they had an issue many years ago in the Toms River area where some of the grounded neutral current returning back to the source, as electricity does, was actually flowing through the ground, and it was actually injuring people. People were getting hurt by it. Straight voltage was detected. So I believe that's why we have that fifth jaw now. I could be totally wrong. But I know that JCP&L doesn't require it, whereas PSEG does. So all of your meter enclosures in PSEG country better have that fifth jaw, or you could fail your inspection. And if you do service upgrades and you got to change that meter after putting the meter in, that's going to be a pain in the butt to do. So if you're not sure what type of meter to use, call the building department and ask to speak with the electrical inspector. He should have all that information for you. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking out all these knockouts, and there's 6 of them in this can here, where you have to use all 6. So I've been told. That's what it's spec to use, and that's what I've always done. And I'll take 2.5 inch screws here, and I'll put a fender washer on them with duct seal behind that washer. So when I screw it to the house here, that duct seal is actually forced up against that opening that I just made right there, so that no water can enter this enclosure. So I'm taking this knockout out. This is actually the load side of the meter here, and I'm going to put in a 2-inch offset adapter here. And I'm going to use PVC to protect my cable. Actually, to protect the cable, that's one thing, but really what I'm going for here is aesthetics. Bending that service entrance cable to a 90-degree bend is difficult, and I don't want water to go into the hole that goes from the outside to the inside for my cable. So what I do is I sleeve the service entrance cable in some 2-inch PVC, and I use an LB, and you'll see that later in the video. But right here, I'm just prepping for that before I attach the service entrance connector on the top of this meter here. And then instead of trying to get that wire into the meter, I'm going to use the meter and feed it up onto the wire, onto the service entrance cable, and then attach my meter to the house. Doing it that way is a lot easier than trying to bend that service entrance cable to get it inside that meter. It goes a lot smoother. And then once I have the meter attached to the house, I'll put my final strap coming down the side of the house to that service entrance cable. I have found this way to be the simplest way and the neatest way, the most efficient way to get this job done. This here is the hub. It's a 2-inch hub, and the hub comes with the meter enclosure when you buy it for PSEG. This is a Millbank meter enclosure. I'm not sure of the model number. I just asked for the PSEG style with the 5th jaw. But this gets attached to the top side, and this hub is a Myers hub is what it's called. It prevents water from getting inside there. You'll see in a moment here, we'll use some irreversible screws to attach it to the meter. And this right here is the service entrance cable connector. I get a couple of extra grommets. I don't know why they give me different grommets here. Usually the grommet that comes with it is just the right size to snug around that service entrance cable when you use some large channel locks to make that connection tight. And then of course you use some duct seal, just like how we do it here in the Northeast. We put some duct seal at the top of that service entrance connector to prevent any water from getting inside this meter enclosure. You'll see what I'm talking about shortly. Now these screws that I'm about to put in to attach this hub to the meter here, these are irreversible screws. So if you look at them closely, you can only tighten them. I don't know if you can see that, but that little cutout on the one side, so you can only lefty loosey, righty tighty. You can only righty tighty these. You can't back them out, so make sure you get them in. I usually like to start them by hand and then finish them off and get them all started all at the same time so the thing goes in there straight. What you want to do once you get that meter in place is just set one screw in to hold it there until you can put your level on top, and make sure you're putting it in straight. And then we're going to use those special screws I was telling you about with the fender washer and then the duct seal behind the fender washer, so that when you tighten down these screws inside this meter, you can prevent any water from entering from behind. This is pretty important. It's not required, but it's important. Actually, keeping water out of the meter probably is required. And if it's not required, it's definitely good practice. These cutters that you always see me using, these are Klein ratchet cutters. So I use these to cut large conductors, like the service entrance cable, for instance. I think it cuts up to 350 kc mil. So I don't ever use that really. So I'm mostly doing these residential services. But it's a ratchet cutter. It's about $200. It's a nice tool to have. This is a 2-inch PVC male offset adapter. basically it's a short little bend, like a box offset PVC. So because that knockout's about a 1/2 inch off of the wall, so this offset adapter makes up for that difference, and it allows me to have the PVC sit on the wall nice and tight to the wall. I had one person that I work with show me how to use a level, and that was this guy Jason, probably about 15 or 16, maybe even 18 years ago. And I use the level all the time to draw straight lines, to draw plumb lines, so that the work looks good. So Jason, if you're watching this, thank you. You showed me how to do this. I never even thought of doing this until you showed me, so thanks. So what I'm looking to do right now is I'm looking to drill a pilot hole to see where I'm going to make my hole saw, so I can fit the backside of this LB into the hole. Alrighty, and what I'm doing is I'm using this LB and this PVC just to safeguard the wire, and it looks neater going inside the house. So I know this is the old service entrance cable, and I know just from being here the other day that the wiring goes into the back of the panel, but with the new 200 amp panel, we're going to come into the top, right into the breaker, instead of coming into the behind of it. So what I'm going to do is I'll rip out this old piece of service entrance cable here, and I will patch it up with hydraulic concrete. And then what I want to do is I want to come in around the rim joist right here. As you can see, I've drawn the straight lines. I'm going to be somewhere in here, but I just want to go downstairs to the basement right now and just verify where I'm going to make that hole. Okay, so I'm standing here at the panel, and if you can see the big thick red and black wire up there, and then nipple, that goes to the outside. You can see where the service entrance comes in. I hope you can see that. See the big thick red wire? Anyway, it goes through, and that's what's sticking out of the foundation outside. It should be easy, but we'll see. You never know. Alright, so back in the basement after drilling that hole, the pilot bit through the rim joist, and I want to show you where it came through. You see it there? I hope you can see it. Alrighty, so that's coming in just above that sill plate. So when I make my hole, I want to come up maybe like a 1/2 inch. And I'm right in the spot where I want to be, which is right in the center of this area right here where the board's going to go, and where the panel will go. And then that service entrance cable, that'll come right to the top of the panel, right in the middle. It's going to look beautiful. That's a Milwaukee Big Hog hole saw. I'm not sure of the size, but it's just a little bit bigger than the PVC LB that I'm about to put in its place. It worked out great. You got to go slow through the vinyl siding, and then you can go a little more aggressive once it gets going. Sorry about this horrible camera angle here. So if you've never used the hole saw before, you need to take it out. As you can see, I've taken out all that material, and I need to take out more. So you need to take the time to clear it out before you can go drilling again. All right, now we're really cooking with gas. I got this 18-inch 7/16 extension bit, so I can go all the way through the rim joist here. Okay, truth be told, the first time I did this, I took a wrong measurement and I was about 1.5 inches short. And so I had to add a coupling to this length here without having to go out and buy another 1/2 inch or 2-inch PVC LB, which is like over $30 these days. So that's why you see a coupling on there going into the male adapter. It worked out in the end. You should never, ever, ever hit that cable directly with the hammer. All right, you could damage the conductors, and then when you go to put that meter on when you're done, it could be the fireworks like the 4th of July right in front of your face and blow your face off because there's a dead short with no overcurrent protection. So use a piece of wood or something dense like that, and then bang that with the hammer, not the cable directly. And as you can see, by doing that, it actually works very, very well. What also works well is a second person on the other side pulling, but I don't have that. So fortunately, I've been working by myself for a long time, and I've learned how to do this without help. The idea here is to get this work done in the first half of the day, so that the second half of the day I can spend down in the basement putting in the new 200 amp main breaker panel. So obviously I strip away the conductors using that special tool by Klein that I use. Plenty of antioxidant penetrox, and tighten my lugs. Nowadays, when I do these service upgrades, I usually show up a day or two ahead of the scheduled upgrade to drive a couple of ground rods and get the water ground main ground electrode installed ahead of the service. So when I come back to do this work, the upgrade, I only have to do a couple of the connections. Some of the work has already been done. So I'm just setting up my wiring here for my 2 ground rods, and then later on in the afternoon, I will set up I'll complete the grounding electrode conductor to the water main. This panel, as you can see, was overloaded with circuits. What a big giant mess that is right there. There are a couple of cables in this assembly here that were no longer being used. You can see the wire nuts on those wires. So what we wound up doing was just putting those 2 cables into a junction box beside the panel. And if we find where they go to later on, we want to energize them, we can do that since they're in place. But I saw no need to put them back inside the panel at this time. So here I'm just obviously just taking, I'm unwiring this box or dewiring it, whatever you want to call that. I don't know if there's a real name for that. But I got to remove all these circuit breakers, and then I'll remove the bus bar and then start taking the old cables out of this enclosure so that we can make room for the new panel. Once I take out the old panel here and the footage, I think the battery went dead. I was able to take this old panel enclosure out and put the new mounting board in, and I mounted it directly to the old existing panel board, which was previously connected to the concrete foundation, and it was stable. So I put my new mounting board right on top of the old mounting board, and it was secure. So just like I did with the meter on the outside, is I'll slide the equipment up onto the cable here. And it's important to not tighten down the screws on the connector so that when I go to terminate my conductors inside the main breaker in the neutral lug, I have some play with that cable. And you'll see shortly that once I've got the conductors stripped back and ready to go into their terminals, I'm able to push up and back so that I'm able to push the conductor up and then slide it into the terminal. You'll see in a moment what I'm talking about. But this is the way I have found the easiest way to manipulate these conductors to go where they want to go. Remember, it's a 4-aught conductor, so it's not going to be very easily moved. There's not a lot of play in a 4-aught conductor, so you need to have some tricks, and I'll show those to you momentarily. Okay, so now that the cable's inside the enclosure and the panel's mounted to the mounting board, I'm able to strip back the sheathing on the service entrance cable and start preparing my conductors for termination. So this is a 200 amp main breaker panel, and like I said earlier, these are 4-aught conductors. So I'm going to twist my grounds together as you see right there and prepare them, I'm just going to give a slight little bend right there in that conductor, and I'm going to mark where I'm going to cut it. Then I'm going to put my ratchet cutters over them and cut away. Now notice that the connector at the top has not been tightened down, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to strip back these conductors, and then I'm going to put on plenty of antioxidant conductors, even though I know they're not required. I always get that in the comments, that it's not required. That's fine. I still like to put it in there. I think it's a good product, and it serves a purpose from oxidation. So once the conductors are prepared, I'm going to show you a little trick here. See how the cable still can move up and down and around? If you tighten down that connector, you wouldn't be able to do that. And so once I strip back and expose the conductors to the terminals, I'm going to push that cable up slightly so that I'm able to land both of my ungrounded hot conductors on top of that main breaker. I wouldn't exactly say it's groundbreaking trickery here, but it is a skill, because moving this conductor and this cable assembly, not the easiest thing to do. And if you've ever worked with it, you would understand that. Here you go, super slow motion, plenty of antioxidant on those conductors. I like to dip it right into the can, and my can's actually almost empty right there. I got a new one the other day. So the conductors are prepared. Now watch how I just push the cable up just a little bit, just high enough to get get the conductors inside the lugs. That's the big secret of how to do that. And once that's done, we'll start tightening up these lugs and start entering the branch circuits into the enclosure. Okay, so sometimes I do get asked this question when I'm tying in these services. So I want to make sure you're not grounded or completing a part of the circuit, obviously. The way you do that is by not touching two wires together, whether the two legs or the ground or any combination of the two. As long as you stay clear of touching either one together at the same time, you'll be good to go, okay? There's no path for the current, the electrons to flow if you're not grounded or connected to the other leg. It's as simple as that. So these are we call these butt splices. So it's got a little, I think it's a 5/16. It's all rubbed off on my tool. It usually says what it is right there. It's a 5/16 hex head. And so I just loosen these up like this, okay? And you can see the opening in there is where the wire goes. And then when I do it on this side and it's open, I tighten them down and then it becomes one connector. It's a butt splice. Then of course I take this thick 2-inch rubber tape and I wrap it around, and then I'll take the vinyl tape and put it around the rubber tape. So there's 2 layers of protection with these hex head butt splices. And that's how I tie in the overhead services. Obviously, I love doing these service upgrades. I wish I could do 2 or 3 of these a week, and that's all I'd have to worry about doing. But it's not a perfect world, so I got to do other jobs as well as an electrician. But while I'm up here on the ladder, I have my 5/16 T-handle Allen wrench. I have the 2-inch rubber tape sitting on top of the ladder there. You can see in the upper part of the ladder there. I have those guards on my ladder so I don't accidentally scratch any siding. The vinyl siding, I probably wouldn't scratch anything. But you never know. So I keep those on there year round, and it's made out of rubber. I think they were like $30 or $40. I think that's a wise investment, so you don't ruin your customer's property while you're up there on the ladder or have it leaned up against the house here. And the way you want to tie in this service is one conductor at a time. I always do the system ground first, and then I push that out of the way so I don't accidentally make contact with that, because that would not be good. That could be the firecrackers like the 4th of July. And then I do one service conductor at a time, and make sure I'm comfortable doing what I'm doing here. And I'm on a fiberglass ladder that does not conduct electricity. That's why electricians use fiberglass ladders. And just like that, power has been restored to the line side of the meter, which is at the top. All right, so the load side and the power to the house doesn't come on until I install or reinstall the meter. And then of course I take a measurement there to make sure I have my proper voltage on the load side. And then I'll come back downstairs to the panel and turn on the main breaker, and then turn on the individual breakers. And I'm able at that point to start cleaning up and get ready to end my day. The only thing you missed was me checking the voltage and verifying that there's no shorts. Just did that, now I'm putting the meter in. As I'm putting the meter in, I veer off to my left right there to align the pins on the meter to the female end on the meter enclosure. And then I just bang it in. But make sure your line of sight is good before you push that in, and make sure it goes in just right. Good to go. 46, 122, 122. Is that height? That was a little bit of an adventure, huh? All right, so typically in a basement like this, in this area, we have a copper water main. So we got to run our wiring from the panel here, okay? And what I did was I fished it across the ceiling right here, which is open on the other side. This is typical of an old basement. Alrighty, you can't see it, but the wire's up in this bay and comes over here to where the water main enters the house. So for it to be considered a grounding electrode that needs to be connected to the electrical system, you got to have at least 10 feet of copper buried in the earth. That's what the code calls for. So if you have that, then you need to bond that. And here's how we did it. We need to make sure that our straps are attached to the wall here, not to the pipe. All right, that's definitely a violation. Here's how they used to do it with a piece of furring strip. Now we have hammer drills. So you use these plastic anchors with these straps and come down to the water main here. We got one spot here on the load side, the customer side, and then the supply side over here is jumped out as well. And the intent of that is so if this meter's ever pulled for whatever reason, the copper water pipes are still bonded to the system. I'd like to say to all my fans that if you're still watching this video, it's almost an hour long. I really sincerely appreciate you doing that. When I started this YouTube channel, I didn't think it would ever grow as fast as it has. And it's all because of you guys coming back and watching this content. And I hope that you learned something from this 200 amp upgrade. If you have, do me a favor, leave me a message in the comments. And as always, thank you for being here. Thank you for subscribing and liking these videos. Thank you for all your comments. And thank you for making this channel become successful. We'll see you on the next one. And thank you for watching all the way to the end. Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.